Mid States Exhibit 157.
Permission to publish?
Absolutely, Judge.
But you've made your objection. You don't need to make it twice. Is that clear?
Yes, Judge.
Sir, may I publish?
You mind?
Mr. Geiger, I was going to put this on the overhead, but since it's not working, I'm going to ask you, may I have permission for the witness to step down, please?
Yes, and if y'all need to reposition,
Sir, if you'll come step down. Just stand on this side of the now.
just stand up there.
Yes, Judge.
Don't worry about if you're in front of the camera. That can deal with it.
All right. So if I'm coming southbound on Thomasville Road, would one way to get to your residence be to turn onto this road here, Armistead, and then climb Prescott?
Right.
And then would another way to get to your residence be to come on down here to Benton and take a left there and come the opposite direction down Prescott?
That's correct.
You may resume your seat. Thank you. May I pass around State's Exhibit 1? We don't seem to be able to get this thing
You
working.
may.
All right, so just old-fashioned way, sir. I think you said that your house is your house. There's kind of two homes in this photograph. Which
Mine is on the right side.
And Mr. Markel on the left. Is that correct?
Correct.
And to the jury, you're going to see exhibits during the course of the trial. You may see them well, you may not. You will have all exhibits for your consideration in the jury room to study more carefully, so don't feel like you have to memorize anything here.
All right. Sir, I want to draw your attention to the date, July 18th, 2014. Do you remember an event that occurred that day that was a little unusual?
Yes, I do.
All right, let's just let these jurors finish looking at that exhibit. All right, if you would, sir, just tell us what initially got your attention that day, July 18th, 2014.
My wife and I were working on a laptop computer in our living room, which faces out to Trescott Drive. And it was just about this time on a Friday morning, which was the 18th, and we both heard a loud bang. We weren't sure what it was, and I stood up immediately and walked to, we have a large window in the front of our house. I think that's called a bow window, but it's a large window, and so I walked there to see if I could determine where the sound had come from. I didn't know whether it come from the right of us or to the left of us, and as I was looking, I noticed a car exiting Mr. Markel's driveway and then proceeding up towards Benton Road on Trescott, and the car moved very quickly. My first thought was that perhaps there had been a burglar attempt. Next door, we had heard rumors that there were some burglaries in the area.
Overruled.
Some burglaries in the area, and that was my first thought. And so I immediately went outside and walked next door to Dan's house to see if I could notice that maybe there had been a burglary attempt.
All right, let me stop you right there for just a moment. I'm going to approach with State's Exhibits 2 and 3. So do you recognize State's Exhibits 2 and 3?
Yes.
How do you recognize these exhibits?
Well, these were taken from inside my house on that later that day.
All right, are these fair and accurate images of the view you would have had of Mr. Markel's driveway?
Yes.
Judge, at this time, I'd ask to introduce states 2 and 3.
Any objection?
No objection from Garcia, Judge. No objection, Your Honor.
They'll be admitted.
May I publish?
You may.
Sorry about this, Judge. We're going to get it working.
Everybody knows I have not touched it.
Yeah, this is more like how things normally go.
Might speed things up. If you look at one and pass it down, so we don't have to wait for each person to look at both photographs.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on while they're working on the technology. So you hear this bang, you look out there and see this vehicle. What can you tell us about the vehicle as far as a description?
It looked to me like a Prius. I couldn't be certain that it was a Prius, but it certainly looked like a Prius. It was light colored. I thought perhaps silver, maybe even white.
All right, and what about the occupants of the vehicle? Did you observe them at all?
I couldn't see in the window. I didn't notice anything. It was just, it happened very quickly.
All right, and were you able to get the tag number of the vehicle?
No.
All right, so we got your attention enough to go out there and look around a little bit. What did you see when you went out there the first time?
As I walked next door to Danny's house, like I said, my first thought was that somebody had tried to break in, maybe tried to break in through the garage. But the garage door was open, and the car was in the garage, and the engine was running. And so then I thought to myself, well, this must not be a burglary attempt if Danny's here and he's getting ready to leave. And so I walked back to my house again.
All right. Did you continue to keep an eye on what was going on over there?
Yeah, I stood in the front of the house in my window looking out, and I don't know why, but I just stood there for a few minutes waiting for him to leave. And the car never left. And I said to my wife, I think something seems odd. I don't know. Danny hadn't left yet. And so I said, I'm going to walk back and check it out. And so I did. And as I went next door again, I looked, and the garage door was still up. The car was still in the garage. The engine was still running. And I thought, well, I guess maybe he's on his cell phone talking, but it just didn't feel right. And I thought, well, I'll walk on into the garage and I'll ask him if everything is okay. So I did, and as I approached the driver's side of the car, I noticed that there was glass right in front of the door, and I immediately looked in at the car at the driver's side through the window, and it had been smashed in, what appeared to be smashed in, and I was startled then to see Dan inside, and his head was bloody, and I immediately said, Danny, what's happened? And there was no response, and I yelled out again, Danny, what's happened? And again, there was no response except that his head was slowly moving from left to right, back and forth. And so my immediate thought then was we had to get medical help there as quickly as possible. And I reached in my pocket for my cell phone to call 911, and my cell phone wasn't there. I had left it in the house on the couch where I'd been originally sitting. So I ran back to my house and grabbed the phone. I came out and started to dial 911. I think my first attempt, I put an extra digit in, 9111 or something like that, but I could see that it wasn't the right one, so I then immediately dialed 911 and to try to get emergency help there as quick as possible.
All right, thank you. I'm going to approach with some additional exhibits, which I've numbered as 5, 6, 7, and also number 4.
Meg Banwell would object to number 5 if we could approach sidebar.
Okay.
Judge, I'll object.
Mr. Geiger, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5. Do you recognize State's 5?
Yes, it's Dan Markel.
Is that a fair and accurate photograph of your neighbor, Mr. Markel?
Yes.
And this is the man who you observed bleeding in his vehicle on July 18th, 2014?
Yes.
May I introduce and publish State's 5, Your Honor?
Any objection to State's 5?
None from Mr. Garcia. No objection.
Be admitted.
Geiger, I'm now showing you what I've marked as State's Exhibits 6 and 7. Do you recognize States 6 and 7?
Yes.
How do you recognize these?
Well, this is Dan Markel's house. On number 6, you can see the edge of my house. And number 7, it's a closer up view of his garage.
And is this a fair and accurate view of the state of his garage at the time you observed it on the date that he was injured?
Yes.
Judge, at this time I'd ask to move into evidence States 6 and 7.
Any objection?
None from Mr. Garcia. No objection.
Be admitted. 6 and 7.
Publish.
You may.
So when you went next door, was the garage door at Mr. Markel's house open?
Yes.
All right. And on which side of the vehicle did you approach?
I approached the driver's side, which would be the left as you're looking in through the garage.
You mentioned the glass was broken or smashed in, I think you said?
I think I used the word smashed. It was little pieces of glass were on the floor, and as I looked at the window, it seemed to be it was shattered, and there was a kind of a gaping hole there.
And when you're referring to the window, which window are you referring to?
The driver's side window, the front window.
All right, so the window that's in the driver's door.
Yes.
The State's Exhibit 7 is a closer up view of kind of how things were situated when you approached that vehicle that day.
Yes.
Let me show you what I've marked as State's Exhibit 4. You mentioned seeing a vehicle exit Mr. Markel's residence that morning. Have you had an opportunity to review State's Exhibit 4 prior to today?
Yes.
And is the vehicle depicted in State's Exhibit 4 consistent with the vehicle that you observed on the day in question?
Yes, it is.
All right. And is there anything about this vehicle that you can say is different from or inconsistent with the vehicle that you observed that day?
No.
All right. I'm going to ask that if you'll just initial State's Exhibit 4 anywhere on there, let us know that that is consistent with what you observed. Were you able to tell anything about the injury? You mentioned that he was obviously injured, but were you able to tell anything about what part of him was injured?
Well, it was his head, and there was a lot of blood. And other than that, he was not responsive, as I said, other than his head rolled back and forth. And when I called to him, he didn't respond.
All right. And was the driver's door to his vehicle open or closed?
It was closed.
And was his vehicle running or not, if you know?
It was running, yes.
And did you touch the car or Mr. Markel at all?
I didn't do either one.
Did you move anything in the garage or do anything to move the car?
No, I did not.
No further questions.
Garcia?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Geiger.
Good morning.
Captain, if I may. Oh. Your house is located to the, your next door neighbor, or you were next door neighbor to Mr. Markel, correct?
That's correct.
And you're on the same side of the street as Mr. Markel?
That's correct.
Oh. May I, Judge?
Sorry.
Mr. Geiger, in Government's Exhibit 3, this photograph, do I need to come closer, sir? Can you recognize?
No, I can say it, yeah.
This photograph depicts one of your windows looking out into what appears to be Mr. Markel's driveway. Is that correct?
Correct.
And after you heard what a loud sound, you were able to look outside your window and see a vehicle moving down Mr. Markel's driveway. Is that correct?
It was backing out.
Oh. Was it backing out at a high rate of speed?
Seemed to be, yes.
When you walked over to Mr. Markel's driveway, did there appear to be any tire or screech marks that you saw?
I didn't look.
Did you hear?
Are you talking to the witness or the jury, Mr. Sangadak?
I'm
Why don't
sorry.
you look at us, please, sir?
No worries, Judge. I
Thank you,
apologize.
sir.
Did you hear any screeching tires?
No.
In about how long, and I know this is a guesstimation, about how long would you say that you had a visual of the vehicle that you described?
I would say probably 10 to 15 seconds. 10 probably be closer.
So closer to 10 seconds, sir?
10 to 15, yes.
And during this time where you had this 10-second window, isn't it correct that you are unable to identify any of the occupants of the vehicle, correct?
That is correct.
And so you would be unable to indicate whether or not that there was one or two people in the car, is that correct?
That is correct.
You would be unable to give a description as to what the driver looked like, is that correct?
That's correct.
On your second trip to the Mr. Markel's garage, when you did approach the vehicle and you saw Mr. Markel, did you walk up to the driver's side door?
Yes, I did.
At any time, to your knowledge, did you step on any of the glass that was next to the driver's side door?
I think I must have, yes.
No further questions.
McManus?
Oh, Your Honor, I have no questions for Mr. Geiger.
Hey, redirect.
Judge, I have one additional area to cover with this witness. I was hesitant to do it because of the technology, but I understand we're going to be able to do it. So I'm going to approach and show Mr. Geiger State's Exhibit 123.
Judge, I would, if this is redirect, if the government...
We'll give you crossed on it.
Thank you.
Mr. Geiger, have you previously had an opportunity to review this exhibit?
Yes, I have.
How do you know this is the same exhibit that you previously reviewed?
Well, I initialed it right here.
And what was on this exhibit?
This is a recording of the 911 call, and in its entirety.
All right, and was this call made by you? Is this your voice on the call?
Yes, it is.
And is it a fair and accurate recording of the call that you made that day?
Yes, it is.
And was the call made at or near the time that you perceived these injuries to your neighbor?
Yes, it was, within a couple of minutes of my discovering him in the car, when I was then able to make the 911 call.
And is it fair to say that you were still under the stress of the event of observing that site when you made the call?
Well, yes, of course.
Judge, at this time, I'd ask you to evidence states exhibit 123.
Objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection from Mr.
Be admitted.
May I publish?
You may.
We'll see.
We're about due for a break anyway. Well, let the jury step out with the bailiff. We'll take 10 minutes.
Mr. Geiger, we're going to take 10 minutes if you want to step out.